This is Carl. He is retired and spends most of his time on volunteer work. Without a car, he gets around the city by bike and bus. Carl always has a paper copy of the RTS schedule in his backpack to plan his trip. However, sometimes he still finds the paper planner confusing and too complicated for planning his route. On his way to his volunteer work today, Carl notices the pop-up learning lab at Rosa Parks Transit Station. Since he has to wait for the next bus to arrive, he decides to try out the game. Carl steps through the instructions on how to use the game. Carl is challenged to plan a bus trip for the fictitious Mrs. Jones, who has never used the bus before, using the RTS Trip Planner. Carl is asked to help Mrs. Jones get from her home to the Senior Recreation Center. First, Carl has to put the details of Mrs. Jones's trip into the RTS Planner. He puts in the start location, the end location, the date and time, and whether he'd like to plan around the time he departs from the start location or when he arrives at the end location. Since Mrs. Jones wants to be at the Senior Center at 9:30 a.m., he chooses arrival time and gets routes. The results screen shows him that Mrs. Jones needs to take bus 28. Next, Carl has to identify the nearest bus stop for Mrs. Jones to walk to. He recognizes the bus stop icons and picks the one that's for bus 28. He clicks on it and gets walking directions for Mrs. Jones to walk to the bus stop. Next, Carl learns about clues he can use to help Mrs. Jones get off at the right stop. Carl smiles when he sees that Mrs. Jones is actually on the bus and anxious about when to get off the bus. This has happened to him before, since the next stop alert is sometimes not clear enough. He remembers the clue that the Walmart is the last stop before the Senior Center, and that Mrs. Jones has to pull on the yellow wire to ask the bus to stop. Carl successfully helps Mrs. Jones get to the right stop. After receiving 4 stars as he completes the task, Carl is then guided to a page where he is challenged to plan a trip for himself, which he has already thought about. As the bus he is waiting for arrives, Carl is so excited to use his smartphone to plan the trip to Publix after his volunteer work using the RTS Trip Planner. Carl never uses the confusing paper planner again, and he is also delighted that his backpack has become lighter.